Good morning, it's Pastor Doug. We're here for None of These Diseases. We're studying the 14th chapter, looking at cats and crocodiles. And of course, those two always go together for me. I don't know about you, but hopefully, as we go through this book by S.I. McMillan, looking from 1963 medical perspective, but we're looking for an even older perspective from the scriptures, which are still true for us today, and something that we can use to help us avoid some of these diseases that others are struggling with. We're looking at this time still in this area of psychosomatic illnesses, how we think and how we feel, how that impacts our bodies, and the directions that God gives us about it. This chapter is subtitled Cats and Crocodiles. And kind of a fan of both, so we'll be interested to see what the good doctor has to say about it. He starts out by just talking about what we've all, or at least the most of us, ever been around a cat has witnessed before. Whenever the cat encounters a dog. Happens around my house fairly often. I got some neighborhood cats that come around. My dogs are inside of the house. Glass doors open. Dogs are getting all excited, and the cat comes around, not knowing it there, and that cat just sort of freezes. It just sort of hunkers down. The hair stands on end. Its heart obviously is beginning to race. Its blood pressure rises. Its breathing is accelerated. It's under that adrenaline spike, known as the alarm reaction. There's a guy named Hans Seele, or Selye. He was Austrian-born physician, immigrated to Canada back in 1939. You can guess why he immigrated. Identified what he called the general adaptation syndrome. Might not be the words that we chose, but he said there was this 3-stage reaction when we were introduced to a stressful situation. The first stage, he said, was the alarm stage, the immediate reaction that our body has to a stressor. For a cat, it could be a dog. For a person, man, it might be another person, or it might be a dangerous situation. It might be a bump in the night. It can be all kinds of things that send us to alarm. And today, man, it might be watching an intense movie or reading a thrilling novel. We can get our heart rates going all different kinds of ways, some for mere entertainment, and others because we really are sort of in that fight or flight mode. What are we going to do? And so that first stage, just that alarm stage, something is not right here, all hands on deck. And then what he called the resistance stage 2. And that is where the body adapts to the continued presence of that stressor. So not only is there, it's continuing to be there, but your body's starting to adjust a little bit now. You're not in that immediate heightened awareness. What am I going to do? What's going to happen? Like that poor cat that sees the dog, it freezes, and then it decides, what am I going to do? Do I need to run? Am I going to be in a fight? Do I need to go up the tree? Can I just be here? And if it's my dog, because he's old and blind and can't smell, just might walk right on by and wasn't a threat at all. And once the body figures out what to do in that prolonged presence or continued presence of that stressor, then comes stage 3, exhaustion. The reduction or the collapse of the body's ability to maintain that heightened reaction to a prolonged presence of a stressor. So you have that initial response, then you have that maintained response, but you just can't keep it up. And so you get to this fatigue state. And if you're in a place where you're always introduced to stresses in your life, it's a daily routine for you, then it's going to get to the point that you're going to have reduced immunity to infection, because that's one of the ways your body responds to it. You're going to be under extreme fatigue, possibly depression, and it is going to have a negative impact on your circulatory and cardiac systems, because it's just pumping everything full and then going back down and pumping it all good. It's just not good for those things. A lot of people end up with heart attacks, and as we'll find out, not good for the artery system or the veins. So just not so good. But just still sort of going on this idea of, hey, we see this response in a cat. his hint, it might be going on in us as well. He says, well, kind of let me take you to a trip to the zoo. Don't know how you are, but I like going to the zoo. It's a fun thing to do. In fact, I haven't done it in quite a while, and I don't know what the rules are, but perhaps that's kind of a place where we can keep some of those social distances, maintain our smaller groups, and enjoy a little bit of outdoors. I like looking at the cats, the predators. I don't like those ones that are in the tiny little cages. My family went once to Nashville Zoo, and we saw some cats and with cheetahs, and we were on this catwalk up above them, and they were down there. There was a savanna view where they could see the elephants and the zebras and all the stuff out there. But man, those cats were under stress. They were pacing back and forth. They were going all around. They could look out there and they could see those other animals, and they'd get as far as they could, and they'd just take off running and run into the fence. I am sure that their stress levels were up. But he talks about at his zoo back in 1963, they were still more in smaller cages. He said, the lion, the king of the jungle, would be restlessly pacing back and forth, probably hundreds of times a day, back and forth, back and forth. He says you could just look at its face and you could see that it was really somewhat fearful, that there was a rigidity to it, and that it was frustrated. He said its anxiousness could be seen in the furrows on its brow. I've never seen the furrows on the brow of a lion, but evidently he could. He likened it to the furrows on the brow of a person who's doing their annual tax returns. It gets you a pretty good picture of what this lion was looking like. And he says, it was under stress. He says, compare that, going a little further in the zoo, to the crocodiles. I don't know about you, but I've been to some of these zoos and I see the crocodiles, and it makes me wonder if they're even alive. I mean, they just look like a log laying in the sun, rarely moving, eyes not blinking, just laying there. I don't know if I'd call it peaceful, because I wouldn't want to get down there with them, because I know that they can respond, it seems like in a heartbeat, whenever they want to. But it does look like they don't really have a care in the world. They're not worried about what the lions are doing in the other cage or anyone else. They're just sort of being where they are, in that stint of not worried about things. He even describes about how their face looks. Got that long snout that's not real attractive, and those gnarly teeth. It's got bumps all over its nose, but it really doesn't care what anybody else is thinking about those kinds of things, where we might care a whole lot about what someone else might think about the way we look, and add stress to our own lives much more than perhaps a crocodile would. He said they're just not shedding any tears over those kinds of things. We all know about crocodile tears. He says, well, let's go about what about the lifespan between the lion and the crocodile? The lion, if it got to 25 years, man, it would be ancient. It would be old and decrepit. Its eyes would be dim. Its gait would be unsteady. And it might be in need of dentures. It'd be pretty well worn, even in the best scenario of living its life in a zoo. And the crocodile, well, it was going to live a lot longer after the lion's bones have already been buried and gone and turned to dust. And why? Well, he says it might be between the stress in each one of its life and how they deal with it. But I don't know. Seems a little far-fetched to compare the two to me, especially since one's a reptile and the other is a mammal. So I was kind of having a hard time going along with his point, but I do kind of get the idea of what he's talking about, since his real subject is talking about people and not the animal kingdom at all in that sense. He says, he really brings it up, says, does our own alarm reactions have an impact on our health? And of course, we'd all say yes. He says the adrenal glands, which are sometimes called on to cause these alarm reactions, are vastly different sizes whenever they're examined from one person to another. And One, if you compare the lion's adrenal glands to the crocodile's adrenal gland, which evidently someone has done, um, the lion's is huge in comparison, and the crocodile's is very small. One is really be used for that lion to be used all the time because, man, they are in the hunt. They are in the fight and the flight. More so, it seems, than the crocodile. They have to be on edge. They have to be looking around. They have to go through that hunt and that prey, and they have to get completely tensed up and go in the chase. And they repeat that on a regular basis. And so they have a bigger system at work to have them to have that fight or flight routine going on. Where compared to the one of the crocodile, it's minuscule in comparison. He brings up a guy named Dr. George Crile. Maybe saying that right, Crile, might be saying it wrong. He said that he put together stuffed animals, had a taxidermy, get natural museum kind of quality animals, and then he gave a replica of the adrenal and thyroid glands of each one. It's a presentation for a bunch of doctors, and so they were enthralled. Not the kind of thing I'd be really excited about and seeing at the Natural History Museum, but they're usually talking about other things anyways. And he presented a case to all these doctors, and McMillan was one of them, saying that the size of the adrenal gland system shows how important those stress glands are for each of the animals and how frequently those are called on in the lifestyle that they have. Makes sense that if you're going to do more, you need a bigger, more robust system. And if you use it a lot, it's going to expand some. Then he sort of jumps to a report about people in the New York Department of Health. They compared, obviously from autopsies, the size of these stress glands between people. I guess bodies that were donated for medical science. They said that some of them were normal and other ones were enlarged. He didn't mention any that were smaller than normal, so it was just a normal or enlarged categories. He said that the enlarged ones are probably a result of the frequency of the emotional center's call for the production of those adrenalines to be and hormones to be released into the system for that person to respond to what they perceived was an alarming situation. Um, and he says in the enlargement might even be an evidence of overuse. More calls for hormones for more needed or perceived situations is going to use it more, going to over it more. And he said also in relation to that, that it's going to have a person whose life is signified by having a higher elevated heart rate and blood pressure and breathing rates. And it's not the ideal life for someone who's seeking good health. If in danger, these glands can be life-saving. They are needed. God created them for us. But most are called on by those who are like me right now, sitting quite safely in an office, comfort of their own homes, but being stressed out. I mean, there are some people who get up and talk to others. That completely stresses them. Talking to a camera like this might even heighten it more. And I'll be honest, even preachers go through that kind of a thing. I had an instructor at one time. It says, if you're getting up to preach and you don't feel like you're going to throw up on your tie, you're probably not ready. His message is that we need to have a little reflection about who we are, standing up to tell a bunch of other people that this is what God says for you. And we should be a little anxious and nervous about that. But that subsides whenever you've prepared yourself to say, this is what God's word is. And not trying to change it, not trying to get your approval, just announcing it so that you can know what he says. Going back to our study here, the call on our stress glands ends up taking its toll on our body, and that's medically substantiated by those who look at these things in the medical field. It really will shorten our days. It fills those days with emotional turmoil. And the scriptures, well, it said it in advance. While it's important to have these glands, and we need to acknowledge that they are beneficial and necessary, because there are times when you hear something and you wake up in the middle of the night and there's an intrusion into your home, and you need to be prepared to protect yourself and protect your family, to determine whether it is that fight or flight or what needs to happen here. And you need the energy and the alertness that is released into your body for that. Even if you're just crossing a busy street, then these glands are going to help you with the different kinds of dangers that you can navigate in and out of. They are not beneficial, though, when there is only a perceived sense of danger. They have a negative impact on our health when the hormones produced are not used as they were intended. We don't fight, we don't flee. We're just stressed out, and our body is reaping the dangers of that. The repetitive calls to produce them weaken our vascular system, they damage it. The high levels of stress they induce fatigue us and fatigue those systems even more, and the response to them. And so, these glands are asked to produce more and more. Our body gets used to those levels, so we get stressed out more, and our body feels like it needs to produce even more for us so that we can have the sense of awareness and alertness that it thinks that we need, but we're used to it because we're having it all the time. And it puts a stress on those glands, and they end up getting enlarged because they're trying to work more than what a normal person would have theirs work for if they weren't always alert to, well, perceived dangers that are not real. The triggers for overproduction of our stress hormones can be just overwork, the stress and demands of that work. Fatigue can come along whenever we're exposed to it all the time. Fear and hate, exposure, like, to hunger or coldness, injury, the sense of hurry, being asked to go faster than we're prepared to go fast. Different kinds of tensions come in our life. The negative results from overstressed hormones always at work in your body can be arthritis. That was sort of an interesting to me. I wasn't surprised for mental disease or vascular disease, but also gastrointestinal disease. Man, it can be bad for us. And Knox says everybody has it because it's part of the way that we are built. He gave his own example. Probably hard for a doctor to admit, but he said, I was kind of stressed out about some money. I didn't have the money that I needed for a particular thing that he was trying to get done. He was waking up in the middle of the night, worrying about it, stressing about it, had that alert reaction going on. And a day turned into more than a day. And he recognized it in himself. And he says, man, I need to do something about this. It was already at the point that it was starting to introduce a little depression to him, not being able to do what he wanted to do. He was feeling fatigued. And well, there are lots of people, when you turn to them and say, hey, I'm kind of stressed out, that'll be glad to give you some advice. Going back to that Austrian-born Canadian doctor, Seil, or Siley, Selye, that I mentioned earlier, he gave, well, if you really want to handle it, then you just need to live wisely and according to natural laws. Not sure what natural laws he's talking about. He wrote a book in 1956 called The Stress of Life. He said these 5 things is what you really need to do. You need to adopt an attitude of gratitude toward life rather than seeking revenge for injuries and slights. Almost sounds biblical, right? He said acting toward others from altruistic rather than self-centered motives. Find that in the Bible too. You need retaining a capacity for wonder and delight in the genuinely good and beautiful things of earth. You need to find a purpose for one's life in expressing one's individuality and fulfilling that purpose. and you need to keep a healthy sense of modesty about one's goals and achievements. Doesn't sound like he introduced anything new, but he published a book. Everybody was crazy about it. Listen to this guy. Listen to these 5 great things. Of course, he didn't quote a single bit of scripture, but all of us could find a bunch of scriptures for every one of those things. There's basically 3 categories of responding to our stress. We either avoid those stressors altogether, we can change our reaction to the stressor, maybe, and we can relieve the stress, the symptoms that we have after reacting to the stressor. That's where most of us end up. We're not real good at avoiding the stressors. We're not good of not reacting to it. Stressor shows up, we react, and now we're trying to deal with the symptoms. And here are some common suggestions that people will tell you when you're dealing with those symptoms. You need to go see a doctor. You need to see some health professional, be examined, make sure there's not some underlying disease or problem that's going on. And a lot of people go, they'll get checked out, doctor won't really find anything, and so we know it's that exposure to that stressor, getting into that alarm stage and working your way through those things. Some will say, well, you just need to talk with a counselor. Find someone that can listen to you and help you sort through things so you're not carrying the same amount of stress over these things that are getting you into that alarm stage. And some will just say, man, what you really need to do, well, they won't use this term, but what you really need to do is self-medicate. You need a stiff drink. You need a puff of smoke. You need a sniff of maybe some white stuff so you can escape. You need to have this ointment, and if you rub it on there, man, it is going to relax you. There are some, and I tend to like this one, man, you need to exercise. And if you exercise enough, it's going to release the endorphins, and so that's going to counteract these other hormones that are already in your system. Well, better not to have those other ones to start with. Maybe just listening to some music. Take a walk out in an area, get away from the busyness that you're in. Aromatherapy, meditation, go get a massage, practice yoga, and the new one right now, mindfulness. We just really need to work on our mindfulness. And there's some people who say, man, what you really need to do is have sex. The real problem is you just need to go and get laid. Now, these are all different suggestions, and I don't want you to be upset by any of them because they're the kinds of things that people from the world are going to tell you because that's all they know to do. There are limitations to what they suggest. They can be momentarily beneficial. They can have some impact. They can momentarily alleviate those unwanted symptoms of anxiety and alarm. They can temporarily offset the rush that comes from our body's response to those alarm reactions. They can make you also dependent on whatever it is that you're using to offset those reactions. And the more reactions, the more you're going to want to use. And there are some people who get into a deep sense of being addicted, and they can't break away from it. It becomes a psychological, sometimes even a physiological addiction, and they have a hard time breaking free from it. Because none of the things that we get suggested can do anything really for the why of the alarm when it sounded. They do not give us an alternative response when we hear the alarm. Dr. McMillan took his own advice. His own advice throughout this book, it says we need to live by God's truth. And when we do, we're going to have none of these diseases. And so he said, oh, I don't know if he did this or not, but hey, self, you need to read some of these passages from God's, his truth, and then you need to do it. The one that he quoted first this is the Phillips translation of 1 Thessalonians 5:18. Be thankful in whatever circumstances you may be in. Now, if you look at verses 16 through 18, New American Standard Version, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. So there is that sense when we hear that alarm, how do you rejoice? I think when we hear the alarm, we first need to make that awareness what's going on here, and then we do need to rejoice that we are not alone. We do need to rejoice that we have a good shepherd. We have a provider, a protector, a strong tower against our enemies. We need to know that God is with us. And we need to rejoice in everything, in every situation. And we also need to be praying for everything that's going on in our lives, especially when these stressors are not real dangers. Whenever it's the pressures of work, whenever it's the pressures of fearfulness and anxieties that are weighing us down, we need to be able to know that we can cast our cares on Jesus, and He is able to carry the load where we are not able to do it. Or you can even think about Philippians 4 through 8. It says, rejoice. Again, get that word rejoice. Rejoice always. Again, I will say it, rejoice. Let your gentle spirit be known to all men. The Lord is near. He's with us. Be anxious about nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And finally, brethren, here's the different response. Instead of thinking about the worst that might happen, think about whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's good, whatever is of good report. If there's any excellence in anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things. The relief that Dr. McMillan received from taking his own advice, he said, was better than any sedative he could ever have taken. And so you have to ask yourself, do I want a life in which I am following the world and trying to deal with my stress? Because you are going to have stressors. It is going to happen. Or do you want one in which you can depend on God to see you through? The promises that are like, no temptation is overtaking you, but such is common with man, and with every temptation a way of escape. So we might be looking for that fleeing, and whenever Satan's after us and we're stressed out about it, say, hey, God said He's going to open up a way of escape. I just got to find it. And when I find it, then I can go. We need to have confidence that God is working with us. His Spirit has indwelled in us, and we are not alone. And so whenever your stressors start heightening you and that alarm is sounded in your life, then who are you going to call? Well, not Ghostbusters, but you are going to call on the Lord, and He is going to be present with you, and He will see you through it. And so I just ask that as we go on these studies, I hope that you're learning to ground your life in God's ways. And as you do, you'll be set free from all these diseases. Right, that's it for this week, and looking forward to seeing you next week. God bless.